Here we go. We should have some music next time, maybe.
Well, good evening, everyone. I want to check with Beth as a thumbs up that you can hear me, okay? Perfect, thank you. We want to welcome everybody here. My name's Debbie Frosto. I'm representing both of our community organizations tonight of the Queen Anne Community Council and Uptown Alliance, who are sponsoring this candidates forum on King County District 4. We have a little bit of a lag time. Jorge is going to be joining us here in hopefully 1 minute. And as soon as he is, we will kick off here. But meanwhile, I'll go through a little bit of house cleaning, house etiquette here. So if you're not already, please place yourself on mute throughout this time unless you are called on. And this is being recorded. So make sure that if you don't want to be part of the public recording, that you tune your video off. And then additionally, I'd like to introduce tonight our moderator, who is Sung Yang. Sung is a consultant and principal with public affairs. Paula, it looks like there's Jorge hopefully coming in. Sung is a consultant and principal with Pacific Public Affairs. He previously served in King County in senior positions for King County Executive Dow Constantine and former Mayor, Seattle Mayor Greg Nichols. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Sung, and let's get the ball rolling.
Thank you, Debbie. And again, welcome on behalf of the Queen Anne Community Council and Uptown Alliance, who are the organizers for tonight's King County Council District 4 Candidate Forum. And I especially want to express my thanks to Beth Bunnell and Debbie Frosto, Beth from the Queen Anne Community Council and Debbie from the Uptown Alliance, who worked hard to put on tonight's forum. So again, I'm Sung Yang, your moderator. And as noted, tonight's forum will be recorded and posted after the event so others can view later. Or if you enjoyed it so much, you can watch it again. So first, we're going to start with the candidates introducing themselves. I want to thank and welcome our two candidates, Jorge Barón and Sarah Reineveld. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for the King County Council District 4 seat. You have 2 minutes each to respond, and let's start with Jorge.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jorge Barón, and I'm particularly honored to be with all of you as a Queen Anne resident for the past 2 decades. My wife, Tyler, and I are fortunate enough to reside on the northwest part of the hill, and all 3 of our kids have gone through co-elementary. And I'm honored to be running to serve you on the King County Council as the representative for District 4, because I believe that together we can build a stronger, more just future for everyone in King County. My vision for King County is grounded on the value that our success as a community depends on the well-being of every one of our neighbors. I believe my professional and lived experience makes me the best qualified candidate for taking on this role. First, as an immigrant who arrived in the United States from Colombia at the age of 13 and who was bullied for not speaking English, and as the proud parent of a trans daughter, I understand the importance of confronting injustice and the challenges faced by marginalized communities. Throughout my legal career, I've dedicated myself to working on behalf of those communities, leading the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project for the past 15 years and gaining recognition as a respected human rights leader. Second, in order to address the challenges the county faces, a council member is going to have to work effectively with state and local partners. I have a proven track record of building coalitions and achieving policy change at the state and local level, and I will bring these skills to the council. Third, I am the only candidate in this race with extensive executive experience, as I have served for a decade and a half as the chief executive of one of the largest nonprofit law firms in the Pacific Northwest, overseeing a staff of 150 employees. I'm well prepared to make the difficult decisions the council faces, because I have been the ultimate decision maker in my organization for over 15 years. And finally, I'm an outsider to government and will bring fresh perspectives to county policy making. I'm grateful to have the endorsements from both the Seattle Times and The Stranger, King County Council members Jeannie Wells, Girmay Sahilai, and Claudio Balducci, U.S. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, and state legislative leaders, including our own State Senator Noel Frame and Representative Liz Berry. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. And now we will move on to Sarah Reineveld.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Reineveld. I'm also running for King County Council. Thank you to the Queen Anne Community Council and Uptown Alliance for having us this evening. I'm an assistant attorney general, public school parent, transit writer, union member, and longtime community advocate here in the 4th Council District. I grew up partially on Queen Anne and now reside in Ballard, and I have dedicated my 20-year public service career to developing legal, policy, and budgetary solutions to some of our most pressing challenges. As an assistant attorney general for over 11 years, I have fought for wages and protections for working families and held environmental violators accountable. In 2016, Councilmember Colwells appointed me to the King County Women's Advisory Board. And in that capacity, I have been working with communities across King County, the executive, and the King County Council to secure investments in affordable housing, behavioral health, services for survivors of gender-based violence, and childcare. I'm excited about bringing that experience working on a broad range of issues that King County needs leadership in this moment in time. I am running because we need bold and transformative action to urgently address the scale of the challenges that are facing our region. I will bring experienced leadership and tangible solutions to address our homelessness and behavioral health crisis by increasing oversight of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority and expanding shelter capacity. I'll work to improve public safety through root cause solutions and standing up an Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And I'll work to protect our environment and expand access to fast, safe, reliable transit. My campaign is about listening to you, residents, leaders, small businesses, and leading with real results for our communities in Council District 4. I am proud to be endorsed by AG Bob Ferguson, Commissioner Hillary Franz, council members such as Colwells, Sahilai, and Dembowski, MLK Labor, King County Democrats, Washington Conservation Actions, and many other leaders. And I look forward to the conversation this evening. Thank you.
Right.
Excellent. It's great to see you both. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jorge. Now we're going to move on to our questions. And let's start with the question about representation of District 4. Queen Anne and Uptown have been represented on the King County Council for the last 31 years by only 2 council members, Jeannie Cole-Wells currently, and of course, Larry Phillips before her. Is a significant legacy to assume, but also an opportunity to bring new ideas to the table. What are some key challenges and opportunities facing this district in the next 4 years? And what would you do to take advantage of or respond to those issues? This time, let's start with Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. This is an excellent question. I have been fortunate to be mentored by both Councilmember Cole-Wells and Larry Phillips that have both endorsed my campaign. And I'm excited about this opportunity to tackle some of the big issues that are facing King County. So one of the big issues that is facing King County now is our affordable housing and homelessness crisis. And I am looking forward to working collaboratively with communities across King County to help end our homelessness crisis by increasing oversight of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, adopting a regional approach to expand shelter capacity, behavioral health services, and also navigation to bring people indoors. We are facing a crisis both in homelessness and affordable housing. We need someone that is going to provide strong solutions and work collaboratively with communities across King County to hit the ground running. We also need to ensure that we are preserving homes for many of those in our communities that are cost burden and fight against displacement. And this is going to be one of my priorities on the King County Council. I hold environmental violators accountable through my day job. I'm a longtime environmental leader. We are dealing with the devastating impacts of the climate crisis in King County that are particularly impacting our frontline communities. And we need someone on the King County Council that is going to provide urgent leadership to work to build a world-class public transportation system to get people out of cars into Metro, and also to leverage opportunities to deliver on light rail to West Seattle Ballard. And that includes ensuring that it centers riders and connects to transit hubs and really creates a world transportation system for the future. I'm going to be laser focused in doing that and ensuring that we're partnering with frontline communities to electrify transit and buildings and to protect clean water and air for future generations. Finally, we're creating we have a public safety crisis. I'm going to do more to invest in the infrastructure of healthy, safe, and thriving communities to create solutions to address that crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And we're going to be able to get into some of the more of the issues that you've outlined there. So Jorge, to you next.
Thank you, Sung. Well, for me, I think I'm trying to respond to what I hear from community members when I go canvassing and door knock in the community. And I think the top 2 issues that I hear from constituents in Queen Anne, as well as the rest of District 4, are around public safety and homelessness. And I think the county has an important role to play in both those areas. Obviously, with regard to the homelessness crisis, the Regional Homelessness Authority is currently a regional work, and the county plays an important role in that. I think that the response that the authority has had so far, while I believe in the regional approach, the implementation has not been up to par. I think most people in the community recognize that, and I think we need to do better in that regard. As somebody who comes from the nonprofit sector, I think one of the things that I've learned a lot and had experience with is how to use resources most effectively. We always worked with limited resources, and one of the important responsibilities that we have as a government is to make sure that we're using those resources effectively. And that's part of the thing that we're going to need to do to make sure that we're able to convince voters if we do need additional resources. And I do think more resources are needed to address the challenges, particularly in the area of homelessness. With regard to public safety, I think that it's unacceptable that, I have 3 kids, as I mentioned earlier, that the biggest risks to their lives in this country is gun violence. And I think there's more that we can do at every level of government to make sure that epidemic that is a public health crisis right now gets addressed. So there's definitely significant challenges at the county level, but I see tremendous opportunities, and I think District 4 is poised to be able to be a leader in a number of areas. The conversations that I have with the community, we have a lot of optimism. We are a center cultural opportunities where a lot of people from the rest of the community come to, including places like the Seattle Center. And I think part of that is going to be building a transportation system and infrastructure. So we have a lot of opportunities with ST3, and we can talk more about transportation, I'm sure, later on. So I'll pause there.
Thank you, Jorge. You did mention public safety, so let's tackle that issue next. We're hearing concerns from our community about crime, vandalism, and open drug use at our bus stops. We are also hearing about service cutbacks and rider and operator safety concerns. These issues greatly affect resident security and safety, visitor experience, and the livelihood of our businesses. What do you think needs to happen to create safer and cleaner bus stops and reliable, safe, accessible service so more people will choose to ride public transit? And what will you do directly to help with these issues? So this time, Jorge, we're going to start with you.
Sure. I think those issues that you highlight are things that I'm hearing from a lot of community members in the district as well. And I think there's a couple of areas where we need to make sure that we're making investments for the long term. It's evident to all of us that we have a significant challenge with substance use disorders in the community. We currently do not have enough treatment options available for folks who do want to seek treatment. And so for me, I think the county plays an important role in that regard, and that we need to work with our partners in other levels of government, including with state government, to make sure that we have the resources. Obviously, we also have the upcoming, the new investments that the county voters approved with the Crisis Care Centers levy. And I think that implementing that resource as urgently as possible and as effectively as possible is going to be important because we need resources to address the needs when people are having behavioral health issues or substance use disorders, that we have places where they can be taken to. With regard to other issues that go beyond that in terms of public safety, obviously we need to make sure that we have a public safety response. I think I want to make sure that we are investing with regard to Metro Transit, for example, on some of the alternative to law enforcement mechanisms, including things like the transit security officers and the ambassador program, so that we have people who can be there and be present and can address issues that may not require a law enforcement response, and also work in investing in diversion programs that have been great here and that have proven to be successful, programs like LEAD and Co-LEAD and Teen Child locally, that have been shown as evidence-based approaches to reduce the incidence of criminal behavior and recidivism. So we need to invest in those programs that are going to help us long-term, not to have to rely as much as we do currently on the criminal legal system as a sole response. And I think, even though I think she was muted, I think she called time. So there you go. I got the message, so I'll pause there.
Thank you, Jorge. Now to you, Sarah.
Yes, I have doorbelled thousands of doors in Council District 4, and public safety issues are top of mind for residents as well as bus riders and operators that don't feel safe in our communities and on public transit. And we need stronger leadership to address these issues. As an Assistant Attorney General who has served on the AGO Opioid Task Force and worked to interrupt gun violence in our communities, I am committed to improving public safety and really working collaboratively to address these issues to ensure that we have safer, cleaner bus stops and more reliable and accessible service. I agree that we need to scale up investments in upstream solutions that are going to bring folks indoors, reduce crime and recidivism, including scaling up shelter capacity, expanded substance use treatment, effective diversion programs, and also effective law enforcement partnerships such as the Radar Navigator program to really get folks that are in mental health, behavioral crisis, and substance abuse crisis off of our buses and into supportive housing and treatment. I also am looking forward to applying the knowledge that I've gained in the Attorney General's office to help lead on dramatically reducing fentanyl addiction and death through scaling up evidence-based treatment hubs and overdose recovery teams, and really targeting our responses to prosecute dealers and suppliers. We need to address the operator and mechanic shortage on our Metro buses by really creating a pipeline of operators, and that means ensuring that drivers feel safer. Right now, because of the fentanyl crisis, many drivers do not feel safe in buses. I'm honored to be endorsed by A2587, which represents the Metro bus operators, and I want to work with them to address this issue. What they have said is that they want to fully implement the Transit Ambassador Program to increase security, particularly in transit hubs, and also implement a QR reporting system where that are riding buses could report serious or threatening incidences in real time, and also ensure that our bus stops are safer.
So related to the topic of public safety is the state of our judicial system, something that both of you I know are steeped in experience with. And it's well publicized that the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office is facing a backlog of thousands of felony cases. Our jails are also understaffed, with reports indicating that police are not making arrests because cases are not being prosecuted. So the question is how can the King County Council partner with the King County Prosecutor to pursue public safety and restore public trust in our criminal justice system? This time I'll start with you, Sarah.
Yes. So our, my approach to the judicial system would be to continue to invest in our courts and prosecutors and public defender's office to ensure greater access to justice, and really to invest in those upstream solutions that we've discussed to address racial disparities and the root cause of violence in our community. I am very familiar with the backlog of cases because my partner, my husband, was a King County prosecuting attorney for many years through COVID, and actually personally dealt with that backlog. And the council has recently allocated millions of dollars to address this backlog. We need to make sure that we continue to address it so that those that are awaiting trial and hearing can have access to justice and due process, and that we're ensuring that those trials are timely. We also need to continue to invest in roots cause solutions such as lead and pre-booking diversion and pre-arrest referrals to intensive care and low barrier permanent supportive housing and other effective diversion programs that work to really address this crisis. And I look forward to working with the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, including Lisa Mannion, to really make sure that we're investing in solutions, including effective treatment that works. Finally, we need to restore public trust through investing in units, many of them that have been stood up by Prosecuting Attorney Mannion, that are going to protect vulnerable populations. And that ensures that we're investing in gender-based violence units as well as economic crimes units around wage thefts. The prosecutor's office really needs to have resources to ensure that we're prosecuting those sorts of crimes that are going to affect vulnerable individuals. And, in terms of restoring public trust, we absolutely need to address racial disproportionality and sentencing, as well as that our criminal legal system continues to invest in communities.
Great. Now to you, Jorge.
Thank you, Sung. So I think you highlighted just some of the problems currently with our criminal legal system, but I will add another element to it, which is the criminal defense system is really at a turning point right now in our county. And if any of you have a time to review, there was actually a briefing that the council received just yesterday in the Law and Justice Committee, where the folks from the public defense sector were talking about the fact that the people are leaving who defend people on the more serious felony offenses. And we're getting to the point where this is actually causing delays in the entire system, because of course people have a constitutional right to a public defense, but we don't have enough lawyers to provide them right now because the caseloads are so high, and it's just like this constant cycle. And so I think the challenge, and I think it's important to note that about 2/3 of the budget of the general fund budget for King County right now goes into the quote unquote justice and safety category that includes the criminal legal system. And so it's a huge challenge. We need to work, it's not one of those things that it's going to be like a simple solution, because the problem is that we have this huge backlog. We need to make sure that everybody gets due process. We need to make sure that we're compensating both prosecutors and public defenders sufficiently to make sure that we keep the staffing sufficiently to get those cases through. But ultimately, long term, we need to make sure that we are addressing the things, in the first instance, and that is through programs like diversion, by funding programs like Teen Child that have been shown to reduce recidivism by a fourfold cycle. And so we have less cases in the system, because obviously what all of us want is for criminal activity not to occur in the first place, rather than be reactive after the fact and having to use a very expensive system, the criminal legal system that is currently tapping so many of the resources. And so that's where we need to be able to provide the resources to make sure that we have less incidents of criminal activity.
So now we're going to switch gears and move on to transportation. No pun intended there. So this time we're going to start with you, Jorge. And here's the question. As a King County Council member, you will have direct access to the current Sound Transit Board Chair, Dow Constantine, and colleagues who sit on the board. How will you advocate for our community's concerns regarding Sound Transit's light rail ST3 project? And this, of course, I'm referring to is the near-term proposal to consolidate stations, but also managing the construction impacts as a result of the project. So let's start with you, Jorge.
Sure. Well, this is obviously going to be a huge issue for our district in the coming years, and I would certainly, obviously this would be a conversation that I would have to have with colleagues if I get the opportunity to serve. But I would be very interested in serving on the Sound Transit Board because of the important role that the Sound Transit Board is going to have on the construction of ST3 and the Ballard light rail extension. And all of the decisions that are going to have to be made. For me, I think the focus needs to be in balancing two things. So obviously balancing the long-term needs of riders for literally decades. And so we need to be very conscious that the system that we're building is going to be shaping what our transportation infrastructure looks like in the communities, both in the area around Seattle Center, South Lake Union, and uptown, as well as into Ballard and Inner Bay. And so for me, we need to be conscious of that and making sure that we think of the long term as we try to mitigate as much as possible the impact that it's going to have in the short term with the construction impact. So we need to make sure that we're engaging community members that are going to be impacted, that we have meaningful engagement and deep communication with folks, because I think people in our community recognize that we need to have a system that's going to work long term. It will benefit our district significantly if we have an accessible situation where people can use the system effectively. And so I think people in the community understand that, but we also need to recognize that there's going to be impacts to people, to entities and organizations around the Seattle Center, for example, to businesses in areas throughout the area. So we need to make sure that we're engaging in a meaningful dialogue as we address those needs, and again, balance that with the long-term interests of the community.
On to you, Sarah.
Yeah, as a King County Council member, I want to champion a light rail system that helps to deliver high capacity rail near transit hubs and connects our communities throughout the 4th Council District, while working with community members directly to mitigate impacts. I am absolutely interested in serving on the Sound Transit Board and ensure that we have an effective advocate for our communities that is really going to ensure that the Sound Transit system meets the needs of our growing communities while managing and mitigating short-term impacts. So first, I'm committed to working with everyone in this virtual room, our Uptown Alliance community businesses, to ensure that we are designing and delivering on the voter-approved stations that will serve our communities and create transit mobility hubs. I'm proud to be endorsed by transit groups such as the Transit Writers Union and Seattle Subway that, have advocated to ensure we're delivering on those voter approved stations like 7th Avenue and Harrison Street Station that are really going to meet and create transit mobility hubs that are going to connect our communities to ensure that we have connected communities where we need them most. Second, I am committed to centering the voices of our community members, of small businesses and community groups to ensure that we are mitigating and lessening impacts to our local businesses, to our neighborhoods, and to our residents. And I want to do this by establishing an advisory board from the 4th Council District, or an advisory group, to advise our office and the 4th Council District on the impacts of sound transit, and to add a transit writer advocate to the board. I think that voice is sorely lacking. Finally, I'm interested in potentially utilizing authority to create service zones in the sound transit taxing district to ensure that the light rail is delivered on time to our communities.
So this is a follow-up question to this topic, and gets a little bit more specific about the impacts. The Sound Transit 3 preferred alignment along Republican Avenue is likely to impact hundreds of units of housing. And since the county is an active partner providing housing in urban centers like Uptown, what role can the county council have in helping Sound Transit minimize the impact or loss of existing housing stock? And this time, we'll start with you, Sarah.
Yeah, so I spoke about this before, but I really think we need to center community voices and businesses' voices, as well as community groups, to ensure that we are mitigating those impacts, particularly to housing and to displacement of residents in the 4th Council District. So I think having an advisory group that's actually advising on the alignments and the impacts of those alignments and the various routes will be really helpful in elevating those voices. I think there's also a huge opportunity here to have a member from the 4th Council District on the Sound Transit Board and to serve as a direct advocate. I think that when it comes to, affordable housing, we need to be looking at just the effects on displacement, and particularly the effects on the loss of affordable housing. I think that we have a huge opportunity here to actually expand affordable housing and especially transit-oriented development, if we get these alignments right, to really unlock opportunities for affordable housing. And so I think balancing the needs of the community in terms of service to connectivity hubs and to businesses and our organizations in the 4th Council District versus its impact on housing will be critically important. So again, I think we need to center community voices. I would like to continue to work with you all on this and ensure that we're creating an advisory board so we get this right, and really ensure that we're also unlocking opportunities for transit-oriented development and affordable housing. And I think we have a lot of work to do in this area, and I look forward to potentially working on this issue.
Thank you, Sarah. Jorge, to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to like the balancing that I mentioned earlier in terms of the short-term impacts and the long-term. I mean, I think it's very clear for us that housing needs to be a high priority. I think many of you may have seen the article in Seattle Times that talked about the report that came out of the King County Council that outlined the need for housing in the next 20 years is 309,000 housing units, in addition to what we have today, right? Just to be able to like meet the current need and the expected need. And so we can't, anytime we're like losing that is something that we need to consider very seriously, and balance that, of course, with what I mentioned before, like the need to make sure that we have a reliable transit system that is going to be effective and that it's going to work for ridership for decades to come. So I will, I think I will push to make sure that when we're considering the options that may be available in terms of the implementation of Sound Transit 3, that we have the appropriate balancing, that we look for opportunities to be able to mitigate the impact and that if there are going to be impacts, that we find ways to be able to redress and to support, businesses or entities that are going to lose capacity, and identify ways where we can shift resources to be able to compensate for those short-term impacts. So I would certainly want to advocate for making sure that we're using resources, including Sound Transit resources, to be able to to make sure that we're not losing housing stock capacity in a particular area, as well as developing additional progressive revenue sources that are going to help us address what is absolutely a housing affordability crisis, and making sure that we're continuing to make investments so that any loss of capacity in one area because of the expansion of Sound Transit 3 is compensated by additional investments that the county is making to make sure that the housing stock in a particular area of our district is going to be compensated in another area.
Thank you. We're going to now move on to the crisis of homelessness and mental health and addiction. And we're learning more and more about the challenges experienced by the newly formed King County Regional Homelessness Authority. And the county is one of the KCRHA's key partners and funders. How will you, as a council member, demand accountability and set measurable performance targets from the KCRHA going forward? Or at this point, are we just better off getting rid of the agency? And first, we'll start with Jorge.
Sung, I don't think that we are to the point where I would say that we need to get rid of the Homelessness Authority, but we clearly need to do better. I think it's, some of the challenges with the creation of the agency are understandable, because anytime you're launching a new effort like this, you're going to have some challenges. But I think we're now beyond the point of what's acceptable. I think the fact that, as somebody who worked in the nonprofit sector, and of course, a lot of the delivery of services is done through actual nonprofits rather than through direct services from the agency, the fact that the nonprofit partners were not being paid on time is kind of a minimum level of thing that we need to make sure that are being addressed. I think that there's obviously already a conversation that is ongoing on the governance structure of the agency, and I think there's been some important there was some important decisions and some aspects of it that were well-intentioned, but I'm concerned that the current structure makes it not sufficiently accountable to the rest of the community. And so I think we need to revise and really review what that structure is going to look like. And of course, we're coming to a point when the actual agreement between the city and the county that created the Homelessness Authority is going to be up for renewal. And that, is the perfect opportunity for us to review, how it's been going and address the challenges in the agency. I think that the regional approach is the right one. I don't think I'm saying like we should stick with the Homelessness Authority as the mechanism necessarily. I think we need to have a regional approach. Clearly, what that mechanism is, I think I'd still like to make sure that we can implement the authority's mandate, but we clearly need to have a different approach.
Sarah, to you.
I'm frustrated, I think, as so many people are, by really the lack of meaningful progress to address our homelessness crisis. And while the King County Regional Homelessness Authority has made some progress, I think now is the absolutely right time to demand a reset and a change to improve accountability, outcomes, and really drive results, and ensuring that we are producing the shelter and services that we need to rapidly rehouse our unhoused neighbors. So I think the regional approach is correct, because we have a regional crisis, and we need to ensure that cities throughout King County are investing in the solution. I'm interested in potentially serving on the governing board of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority and improving the effectiveness of the authority. So we need governance reforms to drive oversight and results. I believe that the governance structure needs to be changed. We need to eliminate and the implementation and governance board, or consolidate both of those boards, so that there actually is some accountability for driving results. Right now it's very diffuse, and that structure would be similar to the Board of Health structure, which is also kind of county, city, and other sort of regional governance body. I think we absolutely need to reset the authority to improve outcomes on effectively delivering the 5-year plan, not just in terms of contracting of services, but ensuring that we actually have a plan to rapidly deliver the shelter capacity we need in King County. We have been underinvesting and under-delivering on shelter capacity. And I don't mean just, temporary shelter, I mean tiny homes and more permanent housing structures. And we need to ensure that we're resetting the authority to drive those results. And finally, I want to ensure that we're partnering and incentivizing on investments from the 39 cities across King County.
Next, we're going to touch upon the topic of mental health. What new ideas do you have for developing more long-term residential and outpatient care for the many citizens and residents suffering from mental health problems and addiction? Sarah, we'll start with you.
This is such an important question. As I'm sure most folks know on this call, King County is in a behavioral health crisis. Our state is in a behavioral health crisis. We have lost 1/3 of our treatment beds in King County. And unfortunately, the state has been chronically underinvesting and delivering treatment beds. I have experience as a member of the King County Women's Advisory Board on investing and securing funding for behavioral health counselors in our MID program to meet some of the complex needs of survivors of gender-based violence and other vulnerable populations. And I think we absolutely need to scale up treatment. In terms of long-term residential and outpatient treatment beds, we need to ensure the effective and equitable implementation of the King County Crisis Care Levy, which will create 100 new treatment beds, and make sure that that funding source continues to restore residential treatment beds. And there's sort of an equity lens in distributing those beds throughout King County. And we're really centering and listening to the community and being collaborative in that approach. We also need to work in partnership with the legislature to add additional treatment beds. And while our crisis care levy will probably create, an additional 100 long-term residential beds, we are losing beds, I think up to 130 plus from the closure of the Cascade Behavioral Health Center. So this problem is, if anything, just growing, and we need strong solutions to ensure that we're working collaboratively, both the executive, the King County Council, and the legislature to expand long-term residential and also outpatient care. King County has recently sued the state. We need to ensure that we're continuing to hold the legislature's feet to the fire to produce those beds, particularly because they're constitutionally mandated for individuals in King County Jail. And there's 100 individuals or more in King County Jail that needs access to those beds.
Okay.
So we're going to suggest that we go to the rapid fire, if that's okay with you.
Okay. Let's have Jorge have the chance to answer that question, then we'll go on to the rapid fire. Jorge, to you.
Thank you, Sung. So I think this is going to be an issue where, honestly, the county by itself cannot handle the current crisis. Like, we are going to need to have the state do a lot more than it's doing. And I do want to acknowledge that the state has taken some important steps in terms of passing legislation, a policy that I think is going to help in the long term. There was a bill 1724 that it approved recently that's going to make it easier for people to enter the behavioral health workforce, and a couple of other reforms. But ultimately, we're going to need a lot more investment at the state level. And that's where I would like to be able to work with our state partners to be able to make sure that we're working, and I bring that experience of actually working at the state level, of generating investments for communities and making sure that those resources get implemented and get used effectively. I think the county also has a responsibility to make sure that our own resources, as we discussed, the Crisis Care Centers levy is going to be an important resource that's going to come online, and that's going to be resources that we need to make sure that it's being implemented effectively. As somebody who's been in the nonprofit sector That's been my role of being able to roll out programs and making sure that they're addressing the actual needs in the community, to make sure that those programs are equitably being, really creating meaningful access for people across the board, that they're culturally sensitive, that they have language access capacity. 25% of our county's residents were born outside the United States. We need to make sure that everybody in the community is able to help to have access to those kind of services, as we work with our state partners to make sure that we are investing in the long-term solutions, which will include, part of that is going to be investing in compensating people who are providing these services, which are difficult services to provide, working, with people who are experiencing behavioral health issues is a challenging issue. And as somebody who, my own daughter has had to need behavioral health services, I'm conscious of like the deep need in the community for those kind of services, and how even for somebody who had a lot of privilege and a lot of access, the current capacity is very limited. So I absolutely think we need to invest a lot more resources in that regard.
Right. So now I'm gonna ask 3 rapid fire questions. This is to not only just break this debate up a little bit, but also to get to know the both of you a little bit better. So here's the first rapid fire question. Would you rather spend an evening dining at the Space Needle or climb Mount Rainier? We'll start with you, Jorge.
Definitely climb Mount Rainier.
Sarah?
Definitely dine at the Space Needle.
All right. Rapid fire question number 2. Jimi Hendrix or Macklemore? This time, Sarah.
Macklemore.
Jorge?
I'm with Macklemore. He came to the NERP gala, so I think very highly of him for that.
All right. Final rapid fire question. And this is a really, really serious and heavy one. Okay. What comes first? Stanley Cup for the Kraken or World Series championship for the Seattle Mariners? Jorge?
Well, given that the Kraken are in our district, I think I have to say Seattle Kraken Stanley Cup.
Sarah?
We're a long-suffering Mariners fans in this household, so I'm going to go with the Mariners.
All right. Well,
Go
see,
Ends.
we've got a little contrast there. Good job, folks. All right, we're going to go back to the questions, and this wouldn't be a real uptown Queen Anne forum without a question about arts and culture. Okay. So, Seattle has a rich history, and this district has a rich history of arts and culture, which has helped shape the success of this region. And given the connections between arts and economic development, and the fact that the county administers funding for so many programs for culture, how would you ensure cultural and youth equity to access to world-class arts, education, open space, and recreational opportunities become more available? So we'll start with Jorge first.
Well, I think right now there's an important opportunity. I think many of you, I'm sure, have been tracking this, that the executive has proposed a Doors Open program that would take advantage of an opportunity that the legislature created this earlier this year for the county to be able to, for the county council to be able to approve an increase in the 1% for the, or 0.1% of the sales tax to be able to devote that. And I have in previous questions, folks I've shared with folks that I don't like the sales tax as a mechanism because it exacerbates regressivity. But now that I've had an opportunity to consider what the executive has proposed, I really appreciated the work that was done to be able to invest resources to really open access to people who might not otherwise be able to access cultural programs. So I think, when I actually watched the briefing that was done this morning at the committee of the whole at the council, and I think there's some important work done. I will say, I would probably, if I was writing it myself, I would have some tweaks to that proposal, but I think it's a strong proposal. And I think that's going to be an opportunity for the county to be able to provide significant resources to expand access. I particularly appreciate that a lot of the focus is on public schools. I've had like 3 children go through the public school system. One of my daughters is very into musical theater, and I've seen the impact that cutbacks on the school programs have had in terms of like her not being able to pursue the opportunities that she wanted. And for me, it's just really important that everybody in the county have access to those kind of opportunities to expand. And obviously, it's also very important because of the economic impact that the culture and arts have in our community, which represent the estimate I understand is 18% of the GDP of the county. So for me, that's going to be an important opportunity for the county to expand access.
Sarah?
So, yeah, I mean, this is just a really tremendous transformational opportunity. I mean, right now, so many of our arts, cultural, and heritage organizations are just struggling to survive and have not yet recovered from the pandemic. So the fact that the county council is considering a measure that will not just help restore funding and stability, but is really a transformational investment in expanding access and creating equity, ensuring that everyone can participate in art, is just such a fantastic opportunity. I am the only candidate in this race that has committed to cultural access funding from day one to ensure that our arts, culture, and science organizations can continue to operate, and that we can continue to increase and ensure access to cultural and youth equity so that everyone has access for the arts. I grew up dancing ballet. It was transformative for me. I saw that it had such a transformative effect in the lives of so many youth, including my own kids, and particularly those I think that, may be at risk or not engaging in the school system. And so ensuring access to everyone is going to be so critically important. So we have to ensure that we pass this funding source and that we advance equity by really engaging in communities and continuing to break down barriers to the arts for underserved schools. One of the things, and children, one of the things that I'm going to be laser focused on is ensuring that this funding can provide access, particularly transportation, for school children from underserved areas to really experience arts and culture, but also that we're going into those communities that may not otherwise have access in South King County and throughout King County to really ensure that we are touching the lives and inspiring a whole new generation of youth. These sorts of investments have been shown to really provide transformational opportunities for youth. I also think we need to make sure that for culture remains strong.
Great, thank you both. Now we're down to our final two questions. What I want to ask you both, both of you have very impressive yet very different backgrounds. What is unique to your experience that you think will specifically benefit this district on the county? Jorge, let's start with you.
Sure. So, well, I think I touched a little bit about this in my intro, so some of this may be repeating that. But for me, I think in order to address, the county has significant challenges, as we've been discussing tonight, but I see a lot of opportunities. And I think in order to address those challenges, we're going to need a council member who is going to be able to, who has the experience of working effectively at various levels of government. I have been working, because of my role in the nonprofit sector with federal, state, county, city officials throughout the time that I worked at Northwest Human Rights Project. And I've actually been able to pass policies and helped shepherd changes in policy at each of those levels of governments, both at the city, at the county, and the state level, especially. And I think that's the experience that I'm going to bring to the council, is working, just like as I was an advocate from outside of government to be able to make changes to policy on the outside. I think I'm going to be an advocate for the county and its residents to make sure that we are effectively making changes in policy, like restructuring our revenue system at the county, that are going to be needed in order for the county to be able to actually make the investments that I believe we need to make to be able to address the challenges that we've been discussing. Also, a lot of the work that we've talked about in so many areas is done by partnerships with nonprofit organizations. And I have that experience of running an organization, being able to use a limited amount of resources in a way that was effective, and running an organization that was widely recognized as being effective and strong. And so I'm going to bring that experience to be able to make sure that the work that the county is doing with relation to issues like homelessness, behavioral health, and so many other issues are being done in an effective manner by being strong oversight, not only for taxpayers, but for the people who need the services
Hi.
right now, to make sure that we're utilizing those resources effectively.
Sarah, to you.
As I stated in my intro as well, I am running to bring experienced leadership and tangible solutions to address and provide leadership on the issues that we desperately need leadership on at this moment in time. And I will bring a 20-year public service career that includes working on budgetary, policy, and legal solutions to some of our most pressing challenges. So first, I will bring an unmatched experience working on a broad range of issues that the King County Council needs leadership on now. I have worked to expand access to affordable housing. As an Assistant Attorney General, I have worked to address our opioid crisis as a member of the AGO Opioid Task Force and litigating the Purdue Pharma case. As an environmental leader, I have worked to protect our environment. We need someone that is able to hit the ground running on expanding access to affordable housing, addressing our homelessness crisis, using the skills to address our opioid crisis, as well as protecting our environment. Those are all issues that I've worked on in depth as an Assistant Attorney General, as a community leader, and as a transit and environmental advocate. Finally, I am the candidate in this race that has experience building broad coalitions and working with our community members and the King County Council to drive results. I'm proud of the fact that Councilmember Colwells and the majority of the King County Council have endorsed my campaign. That's because I've worked with them hand in hand to drive results as a member of the King County Women's Advisory Board, where I've worked to secure investments in affordable housing, behavioral health, childcare. I helped to stand up and reinstate the childcare subsidy program and a wage provider boost, and on services for survivors of gender-based violence. I'm not just very familiar with these issues, I have experience working with our community members in the 4th Council District as a community advocate, as someone that's been a leader in the Democratic Party. And I want to ensure that I'm using those skills to hit the ground running on the King County Council.
Great. Now this is our final question. And you get to ask yourself a question. So here it is. What is a question that you wish we had asked you? And of course, you get to provide that answer. Sarah, we'll start with you.
Okay, I wish that you'd ask me a question about the environment. And so I will ask a question about how King County can be more of a leader on climate action and preserving our environment for future generations. As many of you know, I serve as a Managing Assistant Attorney General in the Environmental Protection Division. I'm proud to have served as the Vice Chair of Washington Conservation Action, and I have spent years in the community driving results for our environment and for bold action to combat and mitigate the climate crisis. We are at just such a significant moment in time to address the climate crisis. I was in Maui with my family and saw just sort of the devastating impacts of those fires, which was a climate-related event. Those events are happening throughout our nation, throughout our world, and they're disproportionately impacting frontline communities and more vulnerable communities. We are not on track in King County to meet our climate reduction goals or our King County Strategic Climate Action Plan. I'm going to be a leader in ensuring that we're getting people out of cars into transit by investing in a world-class public transportation system that connects our Metro Transit to all communities and ensures fast, safe, reliable, zero-emission transit. I want to work with you to ensure that we are connecting our communities to fast, safe, high-capacity rail, and that we're doing so in a way that mitigates impacts. I want to do more to ensure that we're electrifying our buildings and really creating dense, affordable housing and unlocking opportunities for transit-oriented development. Finally, we have opportunities to ensure that we're protecting clean air and water for future generations, that we are respecting and protecting tribal treaty rights. And I'm going to ensure that we're doing more to protect our land, our air, our water, We have a huge opportunity for their parks levy coming up to preserve open space, and I look forward to being a leader on these issues. Thank you.
All right, Jorge, what is a question you wish we had asked you, and what would be your answer?
Well, I think the question that I would want to pose to myself is how are we going to address the childcare crisis that we have in our community? Because I think that relates to a lot of the issues that we've been talking about, and it's kind of like under the surface. I think we, as a parent of three kids, I've experienced that the challenge of finding affordable childcare, and as I go out talking to people in the community. I believe that's going to be a significant challenge that we as a county level of government, as well as all levels of government, need to address. I know there's work happening, and I appreciate that Senator Murray at the federal level has been a big champion on this issue. But I think every level of government needs to be engaged. I appreciate that the county has done important work in that regard. But right now, for example, the subsidy that the county provides, there's twice as many people on the wait list for that subsidy as are people currently enrolled in the subsidy that's supported by the Best Start for Kids levy. And so I think it's going to be really important, because that levy is coming up for renewal in the next few years, that we come up with a plan. I think the county needs to come up with a plan, and again, trying to engage our state partners and others in addressing this. But it's a significant, it makes it more difficult for us to be able to find workers, because when people look at the ability to be able to afford childcare in our community, we just don't have enough capacity right now. There aren't enough spaces, and on top of that, the spaces that are available are unaffordable, and that's going to hinder our economic performance. It's going to make it more difficult for us to provide things like transportation, because we can't find bus drivers, and part of that is because we don't have enough people who can afford childcare, in particular at that level of income. Kind of middle level income folks are a particular challenge finding affordable childcare. So that's an issue that I think the county is going to have to be addressing with more urgency in the coming years.
Great. Well, everybody, that brings us to the conclusion of our candidate forum. I just want to say as a reminder that next week on Thursday, October 12th at 7 p.m. will be the Seattle City Council Candidate Forum. I want to just thank especially the candidates for participating tonight. I also want to thank the Queen Anne Community Council and Uptown Alliance for organizing this forum. But most especially, I want to express my appreciation to all of you engaged voters and interested residents of District 4. So with that, thank you. And is there any other final comments that we need to make, Debbie or Beth?
No, I just want to say thank you also from the community level, from Paula Mueller and Rick Hooper of Uptown Alliance and Queen Anne Community Council. This has been great. The participants, nobody left the screen, so you guys held the attention for a full hour here, which is wonderful to see. And Sung, thank you. Your moderation's been great. You understand these questions, and it's been a real pleasure working with you. So good night, everyone. We have put contact information into the chat. If you put in some questions there, we'll make sure they get forwarded to the candidates directly. And good night. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.